Facing the narcissistic mother-in-law, my journey to emotional freedom. I never thought my life could be turned upside down by a trip. My name is Andre. I'm 38 years old and I've been married to Maria Eduarda for 10 years. Until recently, my life seemed stable. A steady job, a close-knit family, simple plans. But behind this facade, something was eating away at me. We lived in the same house as her parents, Marisa and João, and I confess, my relationship with my wife's mother was always tense. I tried to take it easy, to be patient, but with each passing year, the pressure and disrespect only increased. I never imagined it would cost me what I loved most. Before all this happened, I was a calm guy, even naive in some ways. I thought family was a safe haven, that we helped each other, respected each other, and that everything could be resolved through dialogue. My wife, Maria Eduarda, was always very passive, which, looking back, only complicated things. Her mother had a domineering manner, and she never had the courage to set boundaries, preferring to avoid arguments to keep the peace. I tried not to let it get to me, but the indirect remarks, the nasty comments, the invasion of privacy, all of this undermined my self-esteem and our relationship. I felt alone in my own marriage. The breaking point came when I decided to surprise my family with a trip to Italy. I wanted to do something special, something that would truly bring us together. I financed everything. Flights, hotel, tours, all designed to be an unforgettable experience. But to my surprise, Marisa decided the trip was just for the family, meaning just her, my father-in-law and her daughter, completely excluding me. To make matters worse, Maria Eduarda sided with her mother, saying it would be better this way to avoid conflict. At that moment, I felt a punch in the chest that almost made me give up on everything. Anger mixed with profound sadness washed over me. I, who had always tried to be the ideal husband and the exemplary son-in-law, found myself completely rejected and manipulated. I couldn't think straight for days, my heart pounding and my head pounding. I wanted to scream, cry, run away, but I didn't know where. That's when I decided I could no longer remain silent, that I couldn't continue being trampled on by that woman who was slowly destroying my family. The problem was, I didn't know exactly what to do to regain my dignity and save my personal life. I canceled all reservations and tickets. I did this not out of blind revenge, but to show that I would no longer be disrespected and treated like an outsider in my own family. It was a drastic move, I know. When I told Maria Eduarda, the sadness in her eyes cut through me like a knife, but the disappointment in her mother was even greater. I realized that my actions exposed something everyone preferred to pretend didn't exist. The manipulation and control Marisa exerted over her life and everyone around her. It was a moment of pain, but also of liberation. The domino effect was devastating. The divorce between Maria Eduarda and me was inevitable, not for lack of love, but for lack of respect and support. João, in turn, grew tired of years of silent suffering and decided to separate from Marisa as well. It was a tragedy that seemed endless, but it opened space for truth and a new beginning. I found myself alone with a sense of failure that ached in body and soul, but with a clarity I hadn't had before. I needed to rebuild myself, reclaim my worth and my peace. For the first few months, my mind was a whirlwind of negative thoughts. At night, I would wake up in a cold sweat, reliving arguments and scenes from the house where I'd lived for years. I was afraid I'd never be happy again, afraid I'd carry this wound forever. Anger consumed me, making me want to erase everything and everyone. It was a dark period where I almost gave up on believing in myself. Just remembering it makes me feel a lump in my throat and a pressure in my chest that felt like it was suffocating me. I was lost, but I needed to find a way out of that hole. The turning point came one afternoon when I was sitting alone in the park and I thought, if I don't change, who will? It was as if a spark lit inside my chest, pushing me out of the pain zone. I decided I wouldn't let that situation define me or destroy my life. I began seeking help, talking to friends and going to therapy. Little by little, I understood that the problem wasn't me, but the toxic dynamics I was experiencing, and that to overcome it, I needed to love myself more and set clear boundaries in my life. Rebuilding wasn't easy. I made mistakes, tried to go back, blamed myself excessively, but with each step, I learned something new. I started taking care of myself, dedicating time to myself, allowing myself to feel without shame. I discovered that overcoming grief isn't a straight path, but rather one full of ups and downs. I learned to recognize signs of manipulation and protect myself emotionally. The worst part was facing the loneliness that came with divorce and being separated from my family. But over time, I understood that solitude can be good as long as it's for reconnecting with yourself. Today, looking back, I see that everything I experienced has strengthened me. Pain taught me the value of respect and autonomy. I realized that no one should give up on themselves out of fear or family obligation. I learned that true family is one that respects and supports, not one that manipulates and controls. My heart still bears scars, but they remind me that I can weather any storm. No matter how difficult, there is always a path to rebuilding. After the divorce, my routine changed completely. Suddenly, I was alone in an apartment that felt too huge and empty. Silence was an enemy that haunted me in the early days, forcing me to face my thoughts without distractions. At first, I found myself checking my phone, waiting for messages that never arrived, or replaying scenes in my mind, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. It was a shock to realize that the life I'd built together had crumbled, and I had no control over what would happen from then on. Contact with Maria Eduarda became rare and distant. I knew she was suffering too, but her lack of courage in confronting her mother had destroyed us. Sometimes I blamed myself for not being firmer, other times for being too harsh. The truth is, our love wasn't enough to overcome the weight of that family manipulation. It's strange to feel love and pain at the same time, but that's how I felt. And it was only by accepting this complexity that I began to understand myself better. The presence of João, my father-in-law, was an unexpected relief. He was always a kind person, and after the separation, he showed sincere support. We talked a lot, and he also opened up about his own struggle with Marissa. Knowing I wasn't alone in that chaos gave me strength. It was from him that I learned that we're not to blame for carrying other people's burdens, and that sometimes the best thing we can do is distance ourselves to preserve our mental and emotional health. Marissa, on the other hand, remained a challenge. I tried to keep my distance, but I knew she wouldn't give up easily. Her need for control and power was enormous, and she wouldn't accept losing the battle. Sometimes she tried to get back together with empty excuses. Other times, she provoked me indirectly. It took a firm decision to cut these toxic ties to protect myself. As much as it hurt, it was necessary. I had to learn to respect myself before anyone else would. One of the greatest lessons I learned was about boundaries. I'd never really thought about it. I'd always been a people pleaser, a conflict avoider, a self-sacrificer for the good of others. But this behavior destroyed me. Today, I know that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-care. I learned to say no without guilt, to walk away from what hurts me, and to choose who deserves to be in my life. This was liberating and fundamental to my recovery. The healing process also involved acknowledging my own flaws. I realized that in many instances, out of fear or insecurity, I contributed to the toxic family dynamics. It was difficult to face, but necessary. I needed to change my attitude, my communication, and my way of dealing with conflict. Therapy helped a lot with this, as it showed me that vulnerability is strength and that asking for help doesn't diminish anyone. Loneliness was a harsh but essential companion. I spent a lot of time alone, reflecting on what I wanted for myself. for my life. It was painful to let go of the past, the dreams I had with Maria Eduarda, the close-knit family I imagined. But it was also a time of self-discovery and growth. I began to rediscover myself, discovering interests and passions I had neglected. It was as if I had lost myself, so I could find myself again. Connecting with friends was crucial in this process. Some distanced themselves, others stayed close and supported me as best they could. I learned that not everyone is prepared to deal with our pain, and that this doesn't mean they love us any less. Choosing people who truly want the best for us is another form of self-care. I had to learn to let go of toxic friendships that only reinforced my feelings of failure and loneliness. Over time, I began to create a new routine focused on myself. I started exercising again, ate better, and started reading and studying things that interested me. This not only improved my physical health, but also cleared my mind. I needed to occupy my mind with positive things to avoid sinking back into sadness and resentment. Every small achievement, like a day without feeling defeated, was a huge victory. Despite all the pain, I managed to maintain a respectful relationship with my ex-wife, at least as much as possible. We didn't have children, which made the amicable separation a little easier, but it didn't erase the hurt. We saw each other occasionally, always with some awkwardness, but also with the feeling that we did the best we could. I don't harbor hatred for her, only sadness for what could have been and wasn't. One thing that really surprised me was realizing how badly my self-esteem was shaken. I'd look in the mirror and not recognize that man who'd lost his confidence, his desire to smile, his hope for better days. Insecurity invaded my mind, making me think I might be incapable of starting over. But even in those moments when doubt was overwhelming, I tried to find a reason to keep going. Life had to be more than this constant pain. It was during this process that I realized the importance of self-awareness. I began to record my feelings, my anxieties, and my small progress. I discovered that understanding my own limits and emotions helped me avoid serious relapses. I also learned to forgive myself for the wrong choices I'd made. Forgiveness wasn't something that came quickly, but it was liberating when it finally arrived. Without it, I knew I would never truly be able to get back on my feet. Work was a fundamental anchoring point. Maintaining my professional routine gave me a sense of purpose, something that reminded me that I was more than the problems I faced at home. I had to learn to deal with the stress and anxiety that sometimes overwhelmed me, but the sense of accomplishment in fulfilling my commitments fueled me to keep going. It was a delicate balance, but necessary for my sanity. Little by little, I realized that the family I wanted, the one I dreamed of, didn't exist the way I imagined. This hurt a lot at first, but it opened my eyes to other possibilities. I understood that family isn't just blood, but also respect, support, and genuine love. I began seeking healthy relationships, true friendships, people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could or couldn't offer. I found support in online groups and forums of people who had been through similar situations. It was incredibly important to know that I wasn't alone, that others were also facing family manipulation, betrayal, and the pain of divorce. Sharing my story, even anonymously, helped me express feelings that had been bottled up. The warmth and empathy of those who listened were a balm for the soul. I also became interested in meditation and breathing exercises. At first, it seemed difficult to turn my mind off negative thoughts, but over time, I realized that it gave me a space of peace, even if brief, amidst the internal chaos. These moments helped me manage anxiety and anger, giving me a bit more control over my emotions. It was an important learning experience for maintaining serenity in the face of challenges. Regarding Marisa, I learned that there was no longer any point in harboring any hope of change. Her manipulation was a defense mechanism, and trying to confront her only wore me down further. So, The best way to protect myself was to distance myself completely, to cut off contact. This gave me the freedom to rebuild my life without that constant burden. The peace that came with this decision was one of the greatest achievements I've had to date. I also felt a significant increase in my capacity for empathy. I began to better understand the weaknesses of those around me, including Maria Eduarda and Joan. This doesn't mean I accept or justify toxic behavior, but I learned that people often act out of deep-seated fears and insecurities. This insight helped me deal with hurt and move forward with less resentment. As the months passed, I began to allow myself to live again. I accepted invitations to go out, made new friends, and explored old hobbies I'd neglected due to the suffocating routine. My joy returned slowly, unhurriedly. I realized that life didn't have to be perfect to be good, that simple moments could be precious. This new perspective brought me hope, and that made all the difference in my recovery. Today, when I look back on everything I've experienced, I'm no longer ashamed. I know I was strong enough to face a situation that could have destroyed me. I still have wounds, of course, but they don't define me. I've learned that the most important thing is to never lose faith in yourself, even when it seems the world is against you. My story is proof that no matter how difficult it may be, it's possible to overcome, rebuild, and find happiness again. One thing I learned the hard way was the importance of being aware of signs of manipulation. Before, I didn't realize how emotionally draining it was until the situation exploded. Today, I know that prevention is key. You need to take care of your mental health every day. Pay attention to how people act toward you and not let anyone control your life. This isn't easy, especially when it involves family, but it's essential for well-being. In the midst of everything, I had to relearn how to trust people. After so many betrayals and omissions, creating bonds became a challenge. But it was important to realize that trust doesn't mean blindly surrendering, but rather carefully choosing who deserves that trust. I surrounded myself with people who respect and value me, and through this, I was rebuilding my support network. Loneliness stopped being a punishment and became a conscious choice to preserve myself. Sometimes I feel a deep sadness when I remember what I lost, the plans, the marriage, the family that didn't work out. But this sadness no longer paralyzes me. I accept it as part of my history, without letting it define what I can still build. The past serves as a lesson, not a prison, and this perspective allows me to live the present with greater lightness and courage for the future. I've come to value my freedom and autonomy much more. Before, I sought approval and tried to please everyone, even if it cost me my peace. Today, I know that my happiness lies in being true to myself. I've learned to put my desires first and understand that I don't need anyone's approval to be happy. This change was liberating and gave me a sense of control I hadn't had in a long time. Part of the process was forgiving, not to justify what they did, but to free myself from the resentment that was eating away at me. Forgiveness was a gift I gave myself, so I could move forward without carrying that burden anymore. It doesn't mean I've forgotten or that I'm allowing things to happen again, but that I've chosen to no longer live trapped in the pain of the past. This choice has brought me a peace I never imagined possible. Today, I'm a different person, stronger, more aware, and more loving toward myself. Pain taught me that life isn't just about the good times, but that these difficult times can transform us for the better. I'm proud of my journey, even with all the stumbles and falls. Every step was important to get to where I am today, and I know I still have a lot of room to grow. My story doesn't have a perfect ending, and perhaps never will, but it's real, full of ups and downs, defeats and victories, and that's precisely what makes it valuable. I want to share all of this so that others going through similar situations know they're not alone, that the pain is real, but overcoming it is also possible. Sometimes the road is long and difficult, but it's worth it. I know I'll still have bad days, moments of doubt and fear, but now I have tools to deal with them, to keep me from sinking. Life is a daily battle, and I chose to fight for myself. I became my own hero, even without a cape or medals. And this strength, which I discovered within myself, is what keeps me going when everything seems to be falling apart. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone reading this right now, it would be, don't remain silent in the face of manipulation, disrespect, or emotional abuse. You deserve to be treated with dignity and love. Don't be afraid to say enough, to seek help, to walk away from what's hurting you. Overcoming obstacles begins when you choose to take care of yourself, even if it seems impossible at first. Finally, I want to say that life is full of new beginnings. Mine wasn't easy, but it was necessary, and I believe yours can be too. No matter how dark the path seems, there is always a light that can guide us through the storm. I found that light within myself, and I hope you find it too. Believe me, you are stronger than you imagine.